It's the Blue Vote Cafe, a little bit wonkish, a whole lot of fun. I'm David Schellenberg along with Rachel Oyster, the co-chairs for Democrats Abroad in Canada's capital region. Hello, Rachel.
Hello, David. How are you?
I'm older. I just had my birthday.
You had your birthday, and I actually said happy birthday on Facebook, and then it went right out of my head.
Yes.
Happy birthday, David.
It's my third COVID birthday right now, so I'm getting sick.
Great.
How are you? What's going on over there?
Well, I'm enjoying the fact that it's sunny today. We still have snow on the ground, but I have a couple of snowdrops that appeared once the snow melted, so that was a good thing.
And who's joining us on the podcast today?
Today we have Rebecca Lammers, who is our new chair for DA's Taxation Task Force. Welcome, Rebecca.
Hi, Rachel and David. I'm a longtime fan, first-time caller.
Aww. Better than a caller. Guest. Guest. Taxation royalty.
Yes. Are you nervous to be on the podcast now?
Kind of, yeah. I've listened to not all, but most of your podcasts since you guys launched it was 2020, right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think we've all lost time.
Maybe December 2019. Yeah, essentially 2020. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's lovely.
So then you know what the first three questions are we're going to ask you.
Yeah, I guess so. Remind me, though.
Absolutely. They are, what state do you vote out of? Where do you live now? And what brought you there or keeps you there?
Yeah, so I vote in the great state of Ohio, and I live in the United Kingdom in London, to be exact. I've lived here for 14 years.
Wow.
And the reason I came here was to do my master's. And then I got a job, and then I met a British guy, and then we got married, and now we have a flat and cats, and this is just where my life is now.
Trifecta, Rebecca. Often people will say work or they'll say study, or most often we get love. But you hit all three.
Yeah.
And love is by far the most common answer to that question.
Yeah,
definitely.
It really is.
But work and study, do carry people around.
Well,
the world
a lot
as well.
of it's you go for work or you go for study, and then love keeps you there.
Yes, that's right. It's the glue.
Okay.
So we should probably talk about the thing that nobody ever wants to talk about, and that keeps many of us up at night: taxation. And Rebecca, you are the new chair for the task force, so maybe you should tell us a little about what that has been like for you, because we know we've had Carmelan on the pod in the past, your predecessor, and I know she was the chair for 10 years. So this is there hasn't been a change in leadership for a while. So we'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, it's big shoes to fill. It's, I've been on the Taxation Task Force since 2017. Mm-hmm. And maybe it might be helpful to explain why 2017. So basically, I've lived abroad for 14 years now, and 2016 wasn't our best year in terms of elections. So, I had been on the Democrats Abroad mailing list, and I think I went to a handful of events over the years, but I was never really active. And then 2016, the Orange Monster got elected. I don't know if I can say that.
Yes,
you can say whatever you want.
But after that, I was just like, what is going on? And in 2017, I was just like, I need to figure out how to get involved, because if Trump can win an election and become president, then my attitude was, so can I? Anything's possible. And I just wanted to, so I just started going to any and every DA meeting I could find and getting to know people. And my kind of first kind of soiree was I went to the DA UK Women's Caucus meeting in the summer, and really great meeting that kind of had an impact on me. To start with getting involved in DA. And basically it was just a room full of women, and we went around the room and introduced ourselves, and everybody was asked to say what their top issues were that they cared about. And a lot of people were like, oh, healthcare or paying off student loans or, whatever. And then we came to me, and I was just like, well, taxes, obviously, duh. And I was just really dumbfounded. I was just like, why didn't anybody else say taxes? Like, I thought that's what you guys did. Like,
right.
That's what. And then Carol Moore, who is a great leader within Democrats Abroad, wears many, many hats, but she was the leader of that meeting. And she came up to me afterwards, and she just started telling me, oh, I really care about fixing the tax problems for Americans abroad too, and let me introduce you to some people. And then that's when she introduced me to Carmelan. And basically, I just bugged Carmelan a lot until she'd let me on to the Taxation Task Force. And over the years, I was just very fortunate to be able to coordinate going to a handful of door knocks in Washington, D.C. with her and the team. And then eventually my kind of communications experience came into play, and I was being asked to run webinars and events. And the first time I ran an event for DA UK, basically I was just like, okay, let's, we'll do a tax education event because not enough people know about this. Let's invite a panel of accountants. We'll just talk about the basics of filing and all of that. So I booked a room for 100 people, put tickets on sale. They sold out in 24 hours.
Right. Oh my God.
And I'm just like, what? I mean, I was like, what is the, and then, so moved things around, found a bigger room of 200 people, and then put more tickets on sale. Those sold out in 24 hours. And I was just like, it was like there was a celebrity in town, and it was actually a panel of accountants. Like, you can't get it higher.
They don't hear that, right? Very often, do they?
Right. Seriously. And then there were people showing up, like we were saying, don't just show up. We're sold out. And we had people showing up, just begging to come in and be like, please, I need help. I need to understand this stuff. And it was just really clear to me that I was really hitting on something here. Mm-hmm. And as much as people don't like talking about taxes, it's really clear that people are really lost and they don't know what to do or where to go or how to get information. It's just awful trying to figure out how to pay your taxes as an American overseas. And then on top of that, having to be double taxed or, also having to double file. So filing in the country that you live in as well as in the US, mm-hmm. It's very unfair. So mm-hmm. This is where I've really worked hard in order to, number one, educate Americans abroad on how the system currently works. Because a lot of people, when they move abroad, they just don't know that they're still supposed to file. They don't know that that there is a filing and a tax owing obligation. A lot of us, we just move abroad, for love or for work. Mm-hmm. And they're just living their everyday lives. And they think, well, I'm paying taxes in the country that I live in. It doesn't make sense for me to have to file or pay taxes in the US too, because I'm not paying, my income isn't there. Right. And so a lot of people are very confused because it is a very confusing system. The tax code as it currently stands is, I think it was Carmelan that said this, it's a patchwork quilt of laws that have just been added to over and over and over again over the decades. And even Congress agrees that it's very complicated and it needs to be simple.
And unusual. No other country taxes its citizens living abroad the way the United States does.
Yeah, it's a very unusual system, and we Democrats Abroad advocates for a switch to residency-based taxation so that Americans abroad don't have to double file and don't owe double taxation. And a lot of people, I think in Congress in particular, are very uncomfortable with that premise because they're very used to how things are. It can be very difficult to change their mind. But I think with the new Taxation Task Force, with the new team that I've recruited and we've put in place, I'm very confident that we'll be able to find more and new and better solutions faster and sooner. I would like residency-based taxation to happen tomorrow, but I think there are steps and we're on the right path for it to be achieved. I can't predict the future when that's going to happen, but I'm very confident and I can see a path forward on making that happen now.
Well, what are the first few steps that you see taking on that path?
Well, funny you ask that. One of the first steps is really the survey that we're going to have open to all Americans abroad. You don't have to be a Democrats Abroad member, but we're launching a survey on April 5th, and it will be open until April 30th. And we're looking for Americans abroad to tell us all about the problems that they're experiencing with filing their taxes, paying taxes, and the banking access problems that they may be experiencing as well.
You've done this survey before. What happened the last time you did the survey? What did you learn?
Well, I mean, the main point that you guys keep bringing up, which is that most people moved abroad for love. They moved abroad to be with their.
You did a tax survey and you learned about love. Oh,
yeah. And I mean, there were. I mean, we learned so much. There was a lot of things. The last survey was done in 2019, and there was a previous survey done in 2017. So there's a good historical precedent for the surveys that Democrats Abroad have done of Americans abroad on tax and financial access issues. But because of the pandemic and all of that, the reason we're doing it again is because we need updated information on what is happening to Americans abroad right now. And information that we collected in 2019 was really, really helpful. But things have changed, COVID happened, different banks and access has changed over time. The political climate has changed. So we need new and updated information in order to then analyze the results from Americans abroad and then use that information to then compel Congress to take the urgent action we need them to take to pass legislation to help relieve the problems that we experience.
So from Congress's point of view, what would the relevance be that most Americans move overseas or out of the country for love? How does that affect their thinking on taxes?
Well,
I mean, I know it does, but I just kind of want to dig into that a little bit.
There's this wide misperception within Congress that Americans leave the United States in order to evade taxation.
Okay.
And it is, it is something that is an outdated stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
They're not to say that there aren't people doing that. I'm sure there are, but it's definitely not the majority of people, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so when Congress thinks about people living abroad, and to be honest, a lot of the time when they're passing legislation, they're not even thinking about Americans overseas.
Right.
They're thinking about Americans in the US when they're passing tax legislation in particular.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of the problems that Americans abroad experience is because we weren't thought when the tax laws were written. And that is what causes the wide range of unintended consequences that Americans abroad experience with all the tax problems that we face.
Mm-hmm.
So that's for one, they don't think about us. And number two, when they do think about us, they think of these outdated stereotypes that we're all the rich 1% leaving the country, drinking martinis on our yacht in the French Riviera, and stashing cash overseas so that the IRS can't get any money. So it's just completely and utterly false. That is just not how Americans abroad live, as I've seen, and especially since I connected to the community within Democrats abroad and seeing the wide range of people living all over the world. It is just the furthest idea from the truth. But unfortunately, that is how they think about us. And so that's why they pass these laws that then have substantial impact on our lives.
Right. Do you want to dig into that a little bit? What sorts of consequences have there been, unintended consequences?
So people where in the country that they live in, they're not able to open a basic bank account. And especially for those of us in Europe, we're not really getting a check every month. Like when we're working, we're getting our pay directly deposited into our bank accounts, right?
Right.
And in order for you to be able to get your money, your salary, you need to have a bank account where you live. And many banks have put in place discriminatory, not laws, but
regulations.
Well, they're not even regular. They're like rules of the bank that have decided they're not going to open bank accounts for Americans living in that country.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes it very difficult for an everyday middle-class American who's needing to open a basic bank account to receive their monthly salary. It makes it very difficult for them to be able to function. Mm-hmm. It's a basic necessity of life these days to have a bank account. On the converse of that, it's very difficult for an American living abroad to open a U.S. bank account in the U.S. at the same time. So we're getting completely locked out of the banking system. And this is a huge problem. And it's a denial of reality to a certain extent. Because, if you can't bank in the country you live in, you can't bank in the U.S., where are you supposed to bank? How are you supposed to be able to do everyday things? And it disadvantages Americans working abroad from any of our foreign counterparts or, any other colleagues that are native to that country. And it's just insanity is what it is. Mm-hmm. So I put these arguments towards Congress, and they're always very thankful to hear the Democrats abroad perspective on what's going on outside of the U.S. And our arguments are always very compelling, and we've been very successful in terms of we have 3 bills that are supported by Democrats abroad that are a product of all of the work and advocacy efforts that Democrats abroad have done over the years within the Taxation Task Force. Right. And we continue to push for those bills to eventually pass.
And I think you've touched on a thing there that a lot of us feel, and that we're not trying to hide or avoid paying taxes to the United States. It's just the system is so ridiculously complicated that you get halfway down it and realize I don't have the ability to finish this, and you just sort of give up and never get around to doing it, not because you're trying to hide something, but because the system is so ridiculously complicated.
Yeah. And honestly, a lot of the people that I speak to, they're scared out of their minds. Like they think that because they haven't filed their taxes, they think the moment that they look at doing it, even some people I've had some people say, but if I contact my member of Congress and I tell them I haven't filed my taxes, they're going to report me to the IRS.
Oh.
And I was just like, no, that's not how it works. They represent you. If you literally have done everything you can to try to figure out how to file your taxes and you can't file your taxes, then that's a problem of the system. That's not your problem.
Right.
And that's, I mean, that leads to the most recent bill that was introduced in November, which is the Tax Simplification for Americans Abroad Act. That bill is so instrumental in terms of garnering support within Congress to help simplify filing for Americans abroad. It's not residency-based taxation, so it doesn't remove the double filing requirement, but within that bill, there are a lot of provisions that remove some of the double taxation that actually occurs, like on pensions or on unemployment or foreign benefits. So it's a really great bill that we've been pushing really hard. And I would really like to see it go much further, but it is, I am only one voice. As much as I am the chair of the Taxation Task Force, I am but one voice. And, people are too scared to say anything. But we need more people to speak out, because if they don't speak out, then Congress doesn't know that there's a problem. And if they don't know there's a problem, how are they supposed to then pass any legislation to fix it? Right. So a lot of the work I've been doing has been really encouraging people to find their voice, to help liaise with their representative's office in order for them to have their voice be heard. And I have this grand vision. We're not there yet, but I have this vision where we have these constituency groups of people working together, not huge groups, like 3 to 5 people, even 2 people who vote in the same district and build a relationship with their member of Congress's office and work with them in order to warm them up to supporting our tax legislation efforts. And that is really how you pass legislation, is building relationships in Congress, letting them know about the problems that you experience, articulating it well. All those things are really key, but I cannot do it alone. So this is where I guess I make an appeal to all of Democrats abroad, all Americans abroad, even. I mean, I feel very proud of the work that we've done over the last 3 months in particular, because historically for those that don't really know the Taxation Task Force, it is a group of volunteers who believe in fixing the tax problems Americans abroad experience. And our main kind of focus has been about passing residency-based taxation and fixing, exempting Americans abroad from FATCA filing requirements, so that we don't face any of the problems with not being able to open bank accounts in the country that we live in.
Right. That would be
the reason that happens is because of that, the legislation that was passed with the intention of catching tax cheats overseas, requiring banks overseas to report on Americans opening bank accounts in countries abroad. And so rather than the banks complying with the filing requirement, they just decided, well, we're just going to shut the bank accounts for Americans abroad and just not accept them as customers anymore.
Wow.
Not with our banks in Canada. They just sent us endless letters asking for even more information about us.
Although people trying to open accounts now may be getting a different story, right?
Yeah,
they may be getting refused.
Yeah, I mean, on top of that, people will get letters. So the banks that are complying, they'll send you a letter and say, "Can you provide your social security number?" And we've seen, based on the information you provided, you might be a U.S. tax resident. So can you please fill out this form, or things like that? And people that don't comply with that, they then get their account shut.
Oh.
And then they don't know where to go or what to do. And in particular, there are like retirees who have come to me who have said their account was shut, and then all of their money was frozen. Their retirement money was frozen. They couldn't access it. Other people who had their accounts shut, and then they were forced to take the money out of their retirement or their investment account, and then they had to pay capital gains tax on that.
Right.
They weren't able to port the money, so then they got hit because the bank decided to not accept them as a customer anymore.
Oh, that's horrible.
And this causes a lot of really, people are very upset by it, and it is very unfair. And so this is why we're doing the survey, is to better find out like how many people are experiencing these issues, and more so like to try to dig into it, because to a certain extent, Congress, you need to approach Congress in the right way with this stuff. The kind of way that I'm explaining it to you guys is the way that you explain it to Congress. Mm-hmm. And it's very important that we're very straightforward and articulate about what the actual problem is. And I think because there's there are layers of problems in a lot of these circumstances, it's very complicated, and it's very difficult for the everyday American living abroad to be able to explain those problems.
Right.
Well, and in the survey, do you have any numbers? How many Americans abroad just don't do their taxes, for example?
Well, here's the interesting thing. When you look at the estimates, so, there's an estimated 9 million Americans living abroad. There's 1.2 million voted in 2020. And then if you look at the IRS statistics, in the 2020 tax filing year, there were 1.5 million that filed abroad.
Oh, that's crazy. So 300,000 people filed their taxes and didn't vote. Mm-hmm. That's nuts.
Yeah. And
why not? Why didn't they vote? They're not trying to hide that they're not filing taxes, because they are filing taxes.
And it's funny because a lot of people I talk to don't vote because they think that because they're not filing, they think that if they vote, they're going to get red flagged to the IRS.
Yeah. Yes, I hear that a lot too.
And no, it doesn't work like that.
And we within DA, we know that's not how it works.
Right.
But and a lot of other people, I've been told that it's, vote. I think that taxes are a barrier to voting, and that it is part of the Taxation Task Force's, I guess our kind of new direction is I'm really trying to make sure that people are made aware that taxes are viewed as a barrier to voting. And within Democrats Abroad, we're really trying to remove that barrier so that we can get more people to vote. Because the more people that vote from abroad, the more we're going to demonstrate to Congress that there are more of us living overseas, and the more they will take notice of our issues and take action on the issues that we care about the most.
Absolutely. And that's what 7.5 million people who, outside of those who filed, who haven't voted.
Yeah. I mean,
that number, I'm still back on that number. So 9 million Americans living abroad, 1.5 million doing their taxes.
And 1.2 voted, yeah.
1.2 voted. But the 1.5 million doing their taxes, because it's a line we were discussing the other day with teachers. If you've got a class of 30 kids and 2 kids fail, well, that's on the students. If you've got a class of 30 kids and 25 of your 30 kids fail, well, now that's on the teacher. Like you can't blame the people stuck in the system for the fact that they're not doing their taxes.
Right. Yeah. And there aren't really very many resources specifically for Americans abroad to file their taxes. Like I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who have gone through the effort of calling a US number, and it can be really expensive to call a US number from overseas, and who spent an hour on hold trying to get through, and then click, they got hung up on. So they just wasted a whole hour on hold, and however much that cost them, and then they still didn't get an answer.
Yep.
it really wasn't until it was November, December last year that Americans abroad were finally able to open up an online IRS account for the first time ever. And this was revolutionary for us to be able to actually be able to access what the IRS has on our account online. Like,
was that connected with the pandemic, Rebecca? I'm just wondering because no,
I am not totally sure. I don't actually think it was intentionally specifically for Americans abroad. I could be wrong, but the IRS updated their online website, and all of a sudden you could go in and set up your account, and it was glorious. So
yes, being allowed in when you've been kept out for a long time is a wonderful feeling. So I want to come back to your grand vision, though, and in connection with the survey, you have this idea that people who are constituents in the same district could be working together, developing relationships with their legislators. And I love that idea. And I was wondering if you've included a question on the survey asking if people might be interested in doing that.
So no, but what we're going to be doing is at the end of the survey, they can go to the tax part of the DA website and they can find out more information. And one of those things will be signing up for a constituency group. Because a lot of people, there are a lot of people who are very passionate about fixing the tax problems, but they're very alone because they might know other Americans in the country that they live in, but they don't know anybody else that votes where they vote.
Absolutely. And it can be extended from, I mean, you obviously start with taxes, but it can be extended into so many other areas as well.
And we've already started. Idea. Yeah, we've already started forming some of those groups. Not too many, but I think, like I mentioned, I've really revamped the structure of the Taxation Task Force, and keeping in mind we're all volunteers, nobody's getting paid. But
wouldn't it be nice?
That's the Democrats abroad motto.
Yeah, not even yachts and martinis.
But historically, the team was about a dozen people, and I did a big call out and recruitment drive, and I'm continuing to recruit new members to the Taxation Task Force every month. But it's gone from a dozen people historically, and we now have over 60 people in the Taxation Task Force. That's crazy. Most of the people are not people who have volunteered before. Or even have really been active within Democrats abroad before. Right. And it's because we've all suffered some kind of problem with taxes. It's a very personal issue, and it's very far reaching. It impacts all ages. It impacts people's families and their spouses. I think you asked me earlier about what are the problems that Americans abroad experience? I mean, it's just, there are just too many problems. There are just too many. And it is too much to go into Congress and say, well, here's our list of 43 problems. And it's like, their eyes are going to glaze over. And we have a document like that on our website where we list all of the different tax discrimination that Americans abroad face in the tax code. And it is very helpful in terms of outlining the problems. But what it isn't helpful is that it doesn't tell us what the main problems are. And so I'm really hoping from this survey that the members and Americans abroad are going to be telling us what the main problems are by trying to break it down as simply as possible. So the surveys, we've had about a dozen people working on the survey over the last few months, and we've really tried not to use jargon or acronyms or lingo that people aren't going to be able to really understand. I think the 2019 survey, it was mostly people who do file their taxes. And I think there's a strong correlation between filing your taxes and voting and having a certain level of civic engagement within the Democrats abroad membership.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
so I'm expecting a similar level, but I would really love to hear from more of the people who don't file. And a lot of people, when we were doing in-person events, I haven't done an in-person event since 2019, but when we were doing in-person events, like I would have the tax table and it would kind of be crickets for a while. And then people would come up and then I would start talking to them. And then more like once one person was there, then other people would be like, oh, I can go up there too. And then another person would come up. Yeah. We do in London, we do like an annual 4th of July picnic. So like I did an in-person stand and I just, I sat around and just listened to people's problems all day. Oh that was it. Wow. I put a big sign up that said tax talk. Yeah. I mean, I'm not an accountant, so I can't give anybody advice, but like people would come up to me and then they would tell me what problems they've experienced. And then it was really funny because then people like once they started, like a crowd would start to build.
Yes, of course.
And once like people saw there were other people talking about it or going up to the stand, then they were more open to talking about it. But like you kind of have to give one person has to give the other permission to start talking about it because people are so scared. Like it's like if they even utter a word about it, they think the IRS is going to come and like throw them in jail or something. And it doesn't work that way. But that's how much fear has been instilled in people. Absolutely. And I really do my best to try to break down that barrier so that they are empowered to have their voice be heard, specifically with Congress, so that they know that we have these problems. And like lots of people will come up to me and they'll just kind of whisper in my ear and they'll be like, I didn't file my taxes. And like they'll nod their head or they'll come to the events or, and I mean, it varies that, there's people that are filing very clearly. And then there, I know looking at the statistics, most people are not filing. Yeah. And if you're not filing, you're in the majority. And right. That's a simple fact. And, it's one of those things where, at the end of the day, we need to figure out a solution to the problem, which is people can't access bank accounts. People are getting unfairly double taxed. And these aren't rich people, clearly. These are everyday middle class, lower class Americans going abroad to work, for love, all of that. So this is what we're about. And I'm really looking forward to getting the survey results, which will hopefully help us prioritize what we're going to be focusing on with Congress over the next year.
So do you have any? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, so that's the main goal is to get that information from the survey so that it helps us prioritize the dozens of problems that are out there.
Well, it should give you lots of data. Yeah. But I was going to ask, do you have any guess about how many people might respond based on the previous surveys you've done?
Oh, so the one in 2019 had just under 10,000 responses.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I would be happy with 10,000 responses.
Or double. Yes. Let's double it. Yeah. DA is bigger than it was then.
Yeah, exactly. The more the merrier. And you don't have to be a DA member to do the survey. You can be any American abroad can do the survey. And we kind of timed it in April on purpose because I've been getting an increasing influx of people contacting us going, can you recommend an accountant? I'm doing my taxes again.
I know. Yep. It's top of mind.
Yeah, it's on the top of people's minds. So, after you've spent your average of 11 hours filling out your return again, how about you come and spend another hour filling out our survey? Why not?
Why not? But that'll be a powerful data set if you can get another 10,000 or even more. That's wonderful.
Definitely. Yeah. I think it'll be really, we want to hear people's pain. We want to hear where the pain points are so that we can then prioritize what we're going to be working on.
Yeah, I mean, Rebecca, you keep talking about all the people you talk to at Congress to make changes, but isn't it more than just the people of Congress that have to be involved to fix this screwy system?
Well, yeah, we need more people to vote. I mean, that's just the bottom line is we need more Americans abroad to vote. And, one of the things that comes up often is like people will say like, oh, I don't vote because, I don't file my taxes, and they're not connected on the federal level. There's a lot of like unfounded thoughts that people have around voting and taxes. It's incredible the different kinds of thoughts that people share. But some of the more common ones are that people think, oh, well, I vote, but I only vote in federal elections. So like president, Senate, and House of Representatives, but I don't vote in the state elections because then the state is going to come after me for state tax. And then I go, well, it doesn't really work that way.
I've also heard people say that they don't vote in the local elections because they don't live there and it wouldn't be fair. And I think they've lost sight of the fact that whatever happens at those lower levels affects us living outside the country.
Well, definitely. I mean, I vote in Ohio and I get all the elections and I vote in all of them, even down to the school board level. And I mean, the tax man hasn't come knocking at my door anytime. I think the problem is that a lot of people don't know how state tax works, and that is complicated too. Again, I'm not an accountant, so I cannot give any advice to anybody, but the bottom line is that it does not matter what you vote, what boxes you tick on your ballot when it comes to state taxes. It's more I'll break it down this way. Your right to vote is protected by, I forget what UOCAVA stands for. What does it stand for again?
And I do know this.
How do you spell it? I'll Google it while you keep talking.
UOCAVA. It's the Citizens Abroad Voting Act.
It's the Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act.
Right.
So your right is protected to vote for federal elections. So president, Senate, House of Representatives. You have to vote based on where you last lived. So federal taxes are, regardless of wherever you live in the world, you are obliged to file and potentially owe federal tax. That has nothing to do with voting in federal elections. So they're not connected at all on the federal level, right?
Right. And the voting rolls are administered at the state level. They aren't connected even within the same layer.
Right. So this is where, like everybody should vote in federal elections. You're supposed to file your taxes and, potentially owe tax. That, Taxation Task Force, we're working on fixing the unfair aspects of that already. But that has nothing to do with your right to vote. Like your right to vote is protected under UOCAVA. Everybody should be voting in federal elections, 100%. There's no barrier there whatsoever. The state level voting and taxes. This is where, if you, for example, have lots of connections in that state, and the definition of a state resident, and every single state has a different definition of state resident. This is where it kind of gets a little more nuanced, because definition of a state resident is different for every state. And then it doesn't have to do with who you're voting for on your ballot paper. It has more to do with what box you tick on the voter registration form, whether you tick the box, I intend to return, or my return is uncertain.
Right.
So in most states, regardless of whatever box you tick on your voter registration form, you're going to get the full ballot, federal and state elections in most states. There are 14 states where if you tick the I intend to return, you'll get the full ballot. But if you tick my return is uncertain, they'll only send you the federal elections on your ballot paper. So it's only really 14 states where there's a difference. And depending on which box you tick on your voter registration form, that can be used as a piece of criteria to establish whether you are a state resident or not. And so, but the thing is, every state will have different criteria, and they will normally look at a range of criteria. So for example, they'll see if you have a bank account in the state, if you have a driver's license, if you have a library card, if you own a house. They're not just going to look at you and having voted. And again, it doesn't matter what you voted on that ballot. What matters is what you ticked on your voter registration form. If you ticked I intend to return, they can use that as a piece of criteria to establish state residency.
Right. But bottom line, whatever ballot you get, vote the whole thing. For one thing, local politicians sometimes grow up to become federal politicians, and you want to make sure you've got good people in there.
Yeah. So bottom line is you should be voting in all of the elections. And if you have any concerns or worries, then email DA. We're always very happy to help clarify any kind of concerns or questions that you have in terms of filling out the ballot paper. Absolutely.
So just before we wrap, is there anything that you haven't gotten to share that you would like to?
This is very new information, and one of the things, I'm very fortunate to be chair of the Taxation Task Force, but I have just recently, I guess as of today, I have been made the new international member of the Taxpayer Advocacy Panel.
Oh, congratulations. That's really exciting.
Yeah. And and so for those that don't know, the Taxpayer Advocacy Panel it's a group of citizen volunteers, and the mission is to listen to taxpayer issues and suggestions for improving the IRS and customer service, basically providing a voice inside the IRS.
Okay.
And each state, Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico all have at least one member. And there's also one international member, and I am the new international member.
Are you the first DA member to hold that position?
Maybe. I don't
we can
know.
say the first one we know of.
Yeah,
that's amazing, Rebecca.
It's been a crazy like I just didn't know if it was going to happen. There were all these delays because of COVID, but it's like, I think I applied like a year ago. Wow. So it's been like, I was in a totally different place a year ago. And
that's where we all.
Yeah, but I'm really excited. It's very much in terms of being an advocate for Americans abroad, and more so being a tax advocate. Like it literally says Taxpayer Advocacy Panel. So
that's fabulous.
It's a real, I think, opportunity for it's a real privilege. I feel very privileged. This has never happened where the same person is both the chair of the Taxation Task Force and the international member of the Taxpayer Advocacy Panel. It's just historically unprecedented. So
amazing.
It's not like congressional outreach, like that's not allowed. Like what is TAP for short? What TAP does is very much more like listening and taking on board feedback and making operational processes changed to make it much easier for people to file if that's needed. And like it's procedures and processes and sharing of information and that kind of thing. So, I mean, just today I learned that the AARP, they offer free online tax counseling sessions for people over the age of 50. And I had no idea.
Wow.
And you know how many people have emailed and asked, is there, who could I ask for help? And like that is such a valuable piece of information that needs to be shared wider with Americans abroad, that there's an online tax counseling, free counseling service for them.
Wow, that's amazing.
To help them do their taxes. So yeah, I think the main thing is like, I can't cross, like they're two very distinct, even though they're very much in the same realm. It's kind of like Ghostbusters. I can't cross the streams. So like,
no, but it's great to have both of those, for you to be the connector between them. That's wonderful. Information will flow both ways.
Definitely. I'm really looking forward to what more can be done for the American abroad community, and to help us and to feel more supported by our government and by the IRS and all of those things. I think it's been really severely lacking. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Wonderful. Well, I look forward to hearing more
that
about
is
it.
Great news. Yeah. And I think that's good news for everybody.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll be, more info will be coming imminently on that
Wonderful.
front.
Well, have fun.
Thanks. It's more.
What else can you say, really? I hope it's fun.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's very, from what I've experienced so far, it's very similar to Democrats abroad in terms of like committees and processes and all of that. But yes, I am. I'll be wearing two very similar hats.
That's amazing. I'm really excited to hear that and to hear what comes from it. That's a wonderful spot to be in.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot of power. So I want to share that power and use it to help
Wield
everybody
it wisely. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, Rebecca Lammers, thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about the survey and all the really great stuff that the Taxation Task Force is doing. I'm really proud of the work that the team has been working on in such a short 3 months. It's been insane, the amount of work that everybody has done. So it's not just me, it's the whole team that have done everything. So big credit to everybody and the more that will join in the future.
Yes, absolutely. I'm Rachel Oikster with David Schellenberg in Ottawa, Canada. Thank you for listening to Democrats Abroad, the Blue Vote Cafe.